Sadistic Mood by Samantha A. Cole and J.B. Havens. Copyright 2022. Wyatt got lucky. He'd just shut the truck's driver door and started the engine when the skies opened up and the rain came down in buckets. Flashes of lightning briefly lit up the dark clouds, followed by claps of thunder loud enough to shake the ground and almost wake the dead. Hopefully, his luck would hold until he crossed the last small bridge leading up the mountain before the stream below it flooded, making it impassable. The last thing he wanted was to be stuck in his truck on the side of the road until the water levels dropped again. Considering the storm was supposed to last for hours, with intermittent downpours, he could be there well into the night. 45 minutes later, he was still on the road, albeit much closer to home. It had been slow going at times, as the windshield wipers worked furiously to allow him to see what was in front of him. While there had been several areas that had already flooded under the deluge, he'd been able to inch past them, including the bridge he'd been worried about. Now, he had about 5 more miles of winding pavement and then dirt and gravel covered ground to go before he pulled up to the cabin. The rain pounded against the roof of the truck, demanding entry, as the wipers made rapid flapping sounds, accompanied by a spine-tingling squeak each time the left one ran over a certain spot on the glass. With the dark clouds obliterating the sun and the vastness of the forest around him, it felt like it was the middle of the night instead of late afternoon. Strong gusts of wind rocked the truck every once in a while and forced the rain sideways. He kept a careful eye on the tree line on both sides of the road. With the saturated ground and high winds, it was just a matter of time until trees began to fall. He hoped to be in his cabin by then. When he rounded a sharp bend, a blur of white streaked across the road in front of him. He cursed and slammed on the brakes as he yanked the steering wheel to the right. The truck's rear tires skidded, unable to find traction, but somehow Wyatt managed to avoid hitting the figure. Thank God he'd been going slow due to the foul weather. Coming to an abrupt stop, he whipped his head to the left just in time to realize it was a woman, maybe in her 20s, before she tripped and fell awkwardly, disappearing into a ditch off the opposite shoulder of the road. Shit. After throwing the truck into park and quickly setting the emergency brake, since he was on an incline, Wyatt shoved open the door and leaped out before running across the road. He was drenched within seconds, the raindrops painful needles on the exposed skin of his face and neck. What the hell was a woman, or anyone for that matter, doing running around in the middle of nowhere during the worst storm they'd seen all summer in this part of the state? When he reached her, the woman was struggling to get to her feet, her bare feet. In fact, she was wearing nothing more than a thin knee-length sleeveless blue and white dress, which had bonded to her too slender frame in the torrential rain. Her legs, arms, hands, and feet were covered in fresh scratches and mud, and her long blonde hair was saturated and in disarray. He couldn't make out her features very well. Between the hair stuck to her face and the downpour, visibility was almost non-existent. She hadn't noticed him yet and cried out when she tried to put weight on her right arm, grabbing it and wincing as if in pain. He didn't recognize her, but then again, he wouldn't recognize most people that lived in the area. "Hey, are you okay?" He shouted to be heard over the rain and a round of thunder, but she mustn't have heard him because he got no response. A violent gust of wind rushed past him, taking his ball cap with it. He muttered a curse but didn't bother chasing after it. Wyatt jumped into the ditch, which thankfully wasn't too deep, and bent over holding out his hand. When the woman saw him, her eyes widened, and she let out a scream that sounded almost animalistic and tortured. Kicking her feet out toward him and flailing her good arm, she desperately tried to put some distance between them. Her eyes were filled with terror and shock, and unexpected guilt rammed into his gut for scaring her so badly. His size could be intimidating, and he usually put effort into appearing non-threatening with women and children, but his priority was getting her out of the ditch and rain. Wyatt pulled his hand back and raised both in the air, palms forward. "Hey, it's okay. I'm not gonna hurt you." His words did nothing to calm her down. She grabbed a muddy rock with her left hand and threw it at him, but her aim was off and it sailed past him. She reached for another one. Whoa, easy. I'm trying to help you. You're safe with me." Holding his hands out in front of him to ward off another attack, he stayed where he was. He wanted to help her, but didn't much care for getting brained with a rock either. Breathing heavily, she didn't appear convinced, but at least she held on to the rock instead of trying to hit him again. Slowly he inched closer, as if trying to approach a skittish horse, keeping his hands where she could see them. "Let me get you out of the rain and look at your injuries." With wary eyes that followed his every move, she clutched the rock even harder, not saying a word. Wyatt shook his head. "Please, I'm just trying to help. I swear I won't hurt you." Squatting beside her, he held out his hand again. "Let me help you up." The storm was intensifying, a fact that didn't seem possible. He could hear trees creaking all around them, and he was worried if he didn't get them out of there soon, they'd be crushed by falling debris. A flash of lightning followed by a crack of thunder was far too close for his comfort. They were sitting ducks out there. With patience he didn't feel, he gently put his hand under the rock she held, then closed his fingers around it and tugged. After a moment, she released it, but remained silent. Movement out of the corner of his eye caught his attention, and the hair on the back of his neck stood up. "Oh shit." This has been a sample from Samantha A. Cole and J.B. Haven's Sadistic Mood. Narrated by Gunnar Quaylen.